sir, we have an executive order ordering the declassification of files relating to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
That's a big one, huh? And everything will be revealed. Give that to RFK Jr.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you sent over a mountain of articles on President Trump's second term.
Yeah.
And
a lot to unpack.
It seems like you're trying to wrap your head around this first week back in the Oval Office, and honestly, who isn't?
Right.
I mean, it's been a whirlwind. Executive orders are flying left and right, cabinet confirmations that have everyone talking, and the international community, well, let's just say they have some thoughts.
Definitely keeping us all on our toes.
It's a lot to process, even for someone who lives and breathes the news cycle.
You're telling me.
So, to really grasp the sheer pace of things,
Yeah.
let's zero in on day 4 of his term.
Okay, day 4, let's do it.
You sent an article from the Associated Press. They even said, quote, President Donald Trump is remaking the traditional boundaries of Washington, asserting unprecedented executive power and daring anyone to stop him.
Wow.
I mean, that's
a pretty bold statement.
It is, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it really does highlight that kind of aggressive, almost urgent approach he seems to be taking.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that we're seeing this across multiple fronts,
right,
all at the same time.
He's not.
On day 4 alone, he issued pardons, signed executive orders, delivered international speeches, and pushed forward cabinet confirmations.
Wow.
It's like he's firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, and one area where this is incredibly apparent is this executive order on DEI.
Yes, DEI.
Now, for those who might not be as familiar with this acronym, DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Right.
Essentially, it's a framework that's become pretty prominent in recent years, especially in corporations, government, and education.
Yeah, you see it everywhere now.
Yeah. The main idea is to create more inclusive environments and acknowledge that certain groups have been historically disadvantaged. But Trump's executive order ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity,
catchy title,
argues that DEI actually goes against existing civil rights law. He claims that DEI programs actually promote discrimination by favoring certain groups over others.
So kind of like a reverse discrimination argument?
Right.
Interesting.
And he uses very strong language in this order.
Oh.
He calls DEI programs dangerous, demeaning, and immoral, and says they create a corrosive and pernicious identity-based spoils system.
Wow, he's not mincing words.
No, he's basically saying that instead of promoting equality, these programs are actually undermining meritocracy and creating a system where people are chosen based on their identity rather than their qualifications.
Yeah, so he's essentially saying, forget DEI. Let's go back to a system where everyone is judged solely on their merits.
Right. So do you think this will actually hold up in court?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's sure to be legally challenged.
Uh-huh.
I mean, imagine companies having to dismantle their entire diversity program.
Right.
How would that affect hiring practices? Would it create more opportunities for certain groups while shutting others out? And what about universities? Would it impact admissions policies? There are so many potential ripple effects.
Okay, so we've got a president who is determined to shake things up on the DEI front. But this is just one piece of the puzzle. Another area where he's making waves is artificial intelligence.
Oh, absolutely. AI. It's the topic du jour.
Right.
And what's fascinating here is that you see these two seemingly contrasting approaches with AI.
Okay.
On one hand, he wants to establish America as the global leader in AI.
Uh-huh.
But on the other hand, he's also revoking existing policies that some might argue are already moving us in that direction.
It's like he wants to hit the gas pedal and the brakes at the same time.
A little bit, yeah.
So how is he actually trying to achieve this, American AI dominance? You mentioned something about a council.
Right, so he's created what's called the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. PCAT, for short.
PCAT.
It's essentially a group of experts tasked with guiding the nation toward unquestioned and unchallenged global technological dominance.
Oh, wow.
And that dominance specifically includes fields like AI and quantum computing.
So a team of super geniuses advising the president on how to win the tech race.
Right.
I mean, do they actually have that much influence? What does dominate even mean in the age of AI? I mean, does it mean having the most advanced technology?
Right.
Or controlling how that technology is used globally?
Yeah, those are some of the key questions surrounding this whole push for AI dominance.
Uh-huh.
And it gets even more complex when you consider his stance on controlling for ideological bias in AI.
Right.
He wants AI systems that are free from any political or social agenda.
Okay, but how do you...
But how do you even define that, let alone achieve it?
Yeah, especially when AI is developing so rapidly.
Yeah, it's a moving target.
And speaking of rapid development, this brings us to Trump's stance on the Stargate project.
Ah, yes. Stargate.
Now, for our listener who might not be familiar, Stargate is essentially an AI system designed to gather and analyze intelligence on a massive scale.
Right, it's like AI on steroids.
It can monitor communications, track individuals, and identify potential threats. Think of it like an incredibly sophisticated surveillance system powered by AI.
Big Brother on a whole new level.
And this project has sparked a ton of debate, particularly when it comes to privacy concerns.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right. And you can't talk about Stargate without mentioning the very public clash between Trump and Elon Musk on this issue.
Wow, a good one.
Musk has been incredibly vocal in his opposition to the project, arguing that the potential for misuse and abuse is just too high.
Yeah, he's been sounding the alarm bells.
And Trump, of course, didn't hold back in his response.
Not at all.
He basically suggested that Musk's criticism stems from personal animosity towards someone involved in the Stargate deal.
Oh, the shade.
Right.
It's definitely a tangled web, and the fact that Musk himself is such a key figure in the world of AI just adds another layer of complexity.
Right.
It's like a real-life tech thriller unfolding.
Okay, so we've got a president pushing for American dominance in AI, even if it means butting heads with some of the biggest names in tech. But this isn't the only area where we're seeing a pretty dramatic shift in his stance.
What else is new, right?
Remember how he used to be pretty skeptical about cryptocurrency?
Oh, yeah, he was like the anti-crypto crusader.
Right.
But now it seems like he's gone from crypto skeptic to crypto champion practically overnight.
Yeah, no, it's kind of shocking.
And you can't ignore the fact that he now has a personal stake in the game with his own meme coin.
Right. He's literally putting his money where his mouth is. But his executive order strengthening American leadership in digital financial technology seems to go way beyond just personal investment.
It does.
It lays out a plan to really shape the future of this entire industry.
Yeah, this order emphasizes supporting the responsible growth of digital assets, protecting the U.S. dollar, and this is interesting, explicitly prohibiting central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs.
CBDCs.
It seems like he's saying yes to crypto, but no to government-controlled digital currencies.
Okay, so he's pro-crypto, but anti-CBDC.
Exactly.
I mean, what does that even mean for the average person? Could these meme coins actually become like the new normal?
It's hard to say.
Right, is my 401k at risk?
Those are excellent questions, and they highlight the uncertainty surrounding this rapidly evolving landscape.
Right.
And to try to manage this,
Yeah.
Trump's also creating a working group on digital asset markets.
Another working group.
I know, right?
It seems like everyone in Washington is going to be on a working group by the end of the month.
To oversee this whole thing.
But before we get too overwhelmed, let's switch gears to something a little more symbolic. You included an article about Trump's executive order on renaming things.
Yes. Restoring names that honor American greatness.
And the biggest change here is, of course, renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
Naturally.
Can you believe this guy? What's next? The Trump Atlantic Ocean.
Who knows with him?
But seriously, there's a certain irony in restoring a name that will never existed.
There is, and it's causing quite a headache for map makers.
Oh, really?
Globe maker Peter Bellerby even said, quote, "It is, I suppose, an internationally recognized sea. But to be honest, a situation like this has never come up before, so I need to confirm the appropriate convention."
So they're like literally scratching their heads.
Yeah, he's literally not sure how to handle this.
Wow.
And of course, Mexico isn't too thrilled about the name change either.
I can imagine.
Mexico's President Sheinbaum even joked that maybe they should rename North America to Mexican America.
Oh, a little political tit for tat.
Exactly, a little jab back.
This whole situation actually reminds me of when he renamed Denali back to Mount McKinley during his first term.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So there's a precedent for this kind of symbolic power play.
Seems to be a recurring theme.
And it makes you wonder if he's willing to go this far with names, what other changes is he willing to make?
Right. Where does it end?
Which brings us to another area where he's shaking things up, his cabinet picks.
Ah, yes. The cabinet pick's
Right.
always a source of drama.
And let's be honest, some of these choices are raising eyebrows, to say the least.
Understatement of the year.
And there's a definite echo of that whole DEI debate we were discussing earlier.
You think?
Yeah, it seems like he's choosing people who align with his ideology, regardless of their qualifications or experience.
Yeah, it's definitely raising some questions about his judgment.
And the most controversial pick right now seems to be Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense.
Oh boy, Pete Hegseth. That's a controversial one.
I mean, the allegations against him, excessive drinking, aggressive actions towards women.
Yeah, it's a lot of baggage.
It's a lot.
And Senator Murkowski has been very vocal in her opposition to Hegseth's nomination.
Really?
She even said that, quote, "Above all, I believe that character is the defining trait required of the Secretary of Defense and must be prioritized without compromise."
Wow. So she's basically saying he doesn't have the character for the job.
Pretty much, yeah.
The AP even pointed out that rarely has a cabinet pick faced this level of scrutiny and allegations.
It's definitely unprecedented.
And it's not just Hegseth. He's also nominated Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health and Human Services and Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence.
Two more controversial figures.
Now, these are two figures who haven't exactly shied away from controversy.
Not at all. They're both known for their strong opinions and unconventional views.
Right. It really does make you wonder if these individuals with their unconventional backgrounds and often controversial stances can actually effectively lead these crucial agencies.
Yeah, can they actually get things done? Or will they be bogged down in controversy and infighting?
Right. Well, on that note, I think it's time to take a breath
Yeah.
and process everything we've covered so far. We've got a lot more ground to cover in this deep dive, but first...
Little breather.
Right. All right, we're back and ready to keep unpacking this first week of Trump's second term.
Yeah, a lot to cover still.
We've covered a lot of ground already, from those bold executive orders and controversial cabinet picks to those mixed reactions from the international community and that ever-present media frenzy.
Yeah, it's been a busy week.
It feels like the world is holding its breath trying to figure out what comes next.
I think that's a fair assessment.
So let's dive into how the rest of the globe is reacting to all of this.
All right, going global.
What are we seeing out there?
Well, it's definitely been a mixed bag of reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Some world leaders are cautiously optimistic, maybe even hopeful,
Okay.
while others are expressing some serious concern. It seems like everyone's trying to gauge how this new, or perhaps we should say renewed, America First approach will play out on the international stage.
Well, his first call with a foreign leader after taking office was to Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman.
Interesting.
And they pledged to invest a whopping $600 billion in the U.S.
Wow, that's a big number.
Now, that's a serious commitment.
It is.
Makes you wonder if those trade tensions we saw during his first term might be easing up.
Perhaps, but it's worth remembering that he also took aim at OPEC Plus during his speech at Davos,
Right.
accusing them of manipulating oil prices and hurting the American economy. And of course, Saudi Arabia is the leader of that oil cartel.
So a bit of a frenemy situation there.
You could say
Friendly investments, but not afraid to call them out on the world stage.
seems to be his style.
Speaking of allies, what about Israel? They've traditionally been one of Trump's strongest supporters.
It seems that alliance is still going strong. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar has expressed gratitude for some of Trump's recent pro-Israel actions, like his tough stance against the International Criminal Court and his continued support for Israeli settlements in the West Bank.
Uh-huh. And we can't forget Prime Minister Netanyahu coming to Elon Musk's defense after that whole straight-arm gesture controversy at the World Economic Forum.
Oh yeah, that was a strange...
He called Musk a great friend of Israel and said that he was being unfairly targeted, so that definitely shows a united front.
It does.
Okay, so strong ties with Saudi Arabia and Israel, but it sounds like things aren't quite as rosy with some of America's European allies.
Yeah, there's definitely been some pushback, especially from leaders concerned about the potential for trade wars and a weakening of those transatlantic alliances that have been in place for decades. They see this America First rhetoric as a threat to global stability and cooperation.
And they're also worried about his stance on climate change, right? I mean, he's basically done a 180 from his previous position and is now pushing for increased oil and gas production.
Yeah, that's been a big point of contention.
A lot of environmental groups and world leaders are viewing that as a major step backward in the fight against climate change.
Exactly. It's almost like a return to the old playbook, focusing on American energy independence, even if it comes at the expense of global climate goals. It's a bold strategy, and only time will tell if it benefits the U.S. in the long run or further isolates it on the world stage.
Okay, so internationally, we've got this mix of optimism and concern.
Yeah, a real mixed bag.
Now let's turn our attention back to the home front and look at how the media is reacting to all of this.
All right, back to the U.S. media landscape.
What are they saying?
Well, to put it mildly, the media's reaction has been divided.
As usual.
Pretty much, we're seeing that familiar pattern of right-leaning outlets praising Trump's decisive actions and what they see as his bold vision for America, while left-leaning outlets are sounding the alarm about his policies and those controversial cabinet picks.
Right, so no surprises there.
Not really. It's almost like we're back in 2016 with two completely different narratives emerging about the Trump presidency.
It's like everyone's watching the same movie, but interpreting it in completely different ways.
Yeah, and this media polarization is likely to just keep intensifying, especially as we head into the midterms.
Right, it's like those battle lines are already being drawn.
They are, and they're likely to become even more entrenched as we move further into his term.
So it's going to be a bumpy ride.
It's going to be interesting and perhaps a little unnerving to see how this plays out in the coming years.
Okay, so internationally, we've got a mix of hope and skepticism.
Yeah.
Domestically, we have this deepening divide, and the media is more polarized than ever.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to process, even with expert help.
It is, but before we get totally swept up in the chaos of this first week back, let's step back and try to make some sense of it all. What are the big picture trends we're seeing emerge?
Yeah, good point. It's easy to get lost in the day-to-day headlines.
Exactly.
But what are the underlying themes that might help us understand where things are headed?
Well, I think there are three major themes that are pretty clear at this point.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, Trump is showing a strong emphasis on using executive action to push through his agenda. He's bypassing Congress and pushing the boundaries of presidential power with these executive orders.
It's like he's saying, I was elected to do a job, and I'm not going to let Congress slow me down.
Exactly. And second, he's doubling down on his America First approach.
So a continuation of what we saw during his first term, but maybe even more amplified.
I think that's a fair assessment. He's prioritizing American interests, even if it means straining relationships with longstanding allies or disrupting what some might see as established global norms.
And what's the third trend?
The third trend is his focus on symbolic actions and tapping into those existing cultural anxieties to mobilize his base, from renaming the Gulf of Mexico to attacking DEI initiatives. It seems like he's trying to appeal to a sense of national pride and identity.
It's a strategy that's worked for him in the past, so it makes sense that he'd return to it. But how will all of this actually impact the average American?
Right.
Will these actions have real, tangible consequences, or is it mostly political theater?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
still early days, but these executive orders have the potential to reshape the American landscape in some pretty significant ways.
Give me an example.
For example, his DEI order could lead to widespread legal challenges against companies and universities with existing diversity initiatives.
Right.
That could potentially impact hiring practices, admissions policies, and even access to certain resources and opportunities.
And his AI and cryptocurrency orders could also have a major impact on the tech and finance sectors. We could see a wave of new regulations, shifts in investment, and potentially even a reshaping of the global financial system.
It's all on the table.
And of course, there's that constant concern that his America First agenda could spark trade wars,
Right.
which would likely lead to higher prices for consumers.
That's certainly a possibility. However, we can't overlook the potential for positive outcomes.
Right.
His focus on American innovation could lead to breakthroughs in areas like AI and quantum computing, potentially creating new jobs and boosting the economy.
And his deregulation efforts could lead to less bureaucracy and red tape, which could be good for businesses.
It's all about finding that balance between promoting innovation and economic growth while also protecting consumers and ensuring a level playing field. It's going to be a complex and ever-evolving situation, and it will be crucial to closely monitor how these policies actually play out in the real world.
So a time for vigilance and informed engagement.
Exactly.
We can't just sit back and wait to see what happens.
You're absolutely right. We need to stay informed, hold our leaders accountable, and engage in those difficult conversations about the kind of future we want to create.
Speaking of difficult conversations, remember our earlier discussion about the Stargate project?
Oh, yes.
And its potential implications? It's almost like something out of a science fiction film.
It is kind of mind-blowing.
This incredibly powerful AI system that can monitor communications, track individuals, and identify potential threats. It's a powerful tool, but it also raises some serious ethical questions.
It does.
About privacy, civil liberties, and the potential for misuse.
Exactly. It's fascinating, even a bit unsettling, to think about the possibilities, both good and bad.
Right.
On one hand, you can see how this kind of technology could be used to prevent crime, stop terrorism, and keep people safe.
Right.
But on the other hand, there's always that risk that it could be used for more nefarious purposes.
Imagine a world where the government can track your every move, listen to your every conversation, and even analyze your thoughts and beliefs. It's a slippery slope, and it's crucial that we have safeguards in place to prevent this technology from being used to erode our fundamental freedoms.
Absolutely, and that's where the debate gets really heated. Critics of the project argue that there isn't enough transparency or oversight, which leaves the door open for abuse.
Even if those in power have good intentions, we've seen time and time again how easily technology can be misused.
That's true.
There's always the risk of unintended consequences like false positives, bias algorithms, or even data breaches that could expose sensitive personal information.
It's a powerful reminder that technological advancements often come with ethical dilemmas that we as a society need to grapple with. We can't just blindly embrace new technology without considering its potential impact on our lives and our freedoms.
So we've got a lot on our plate: international uncertainty, a divided nation, a polarized media, and the ethical complexities of powerful new technologies like Stargate.
A lot to digest.
It's enough to make your head spin.
Yeah, but in part 3, we'll shift gears a bit and explore some potential scenarios for what Trump's second term might hold.
Okay, look ahead.
We'll look at possibilities for both domestic and international affairs, and we'll delve into the potential impact on everything, from the economy to the environment to the future of technology.
Sounds like a plan.
So stay tuned.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into this pretty crazy first week of Trump's second term.
It's been a roller coaster, that's for sure.
We've covered so much, from those bold executive orders and controversial cabinet picks to those mixed reactions from around the world and that media frenzy that just never seems to end.
The media is loving it.
Now it's time to put on our, prognostication hats and try to look ahead to what the next 4 years might have in store.
All right, crystal ball time.
So, before we launch into the future, let's just do a quick recap for those just joining us.
Okay, sounds good.
Essentially, this first week has been like a whirlwind of activity, all driven by Trump's, determination to enact this America First agenda.
Yeah, he's not wasting any time.
Often through executive power,
Mm-hmm.
and often by, tapping into some pretty deep cultural anxieties that exist within the country.
He knows how to push those buttons.
And all of this is generating a ton of uncertainty, both at home and abroad, about the direction things are headed.
Yeah, people are definitely on edge.
So let's unpack some potential scenarios. What are the key areas we should be watching closely as this term unfolds?
Well, domestically, the legal battles are just getting started. That executive order on DEI is sure to face a barrage of challenges.
Right. Legal experts are already debating its constitutionality.
Exactly. And it wouldn't be surprising to see this issue make its way all the way up to the Supreme Court.
So the fate of DEI programs across the country could be hanging in the balance for months, if not years. And what happens if the courts actually strike down the order? I mean, what does that mean for Trump's agenda more broadly?
It would definitely be a major setback. It would signal that there are limits to his executive power, and it would embolden those who oppose his policies. We could see even more legal challenges to his other executive orders, and it would likely make it harder for him to get his legislative agenda through Congress.
So the stakes are high, not just for DEI, but for the entire power dynamic between the executive and judicial branches.
Exactly. This could set a precedent for future presidents as well.
Another area to keep an eye on, I think, is how those AI and cryptocurrency policies actually get implemented.
Oh, yeah, those are big ones.
Both of these fields are evolving at an incredibly rapid pace, and there's a lot of uncertainty about how these executive orders will translate into concrete action.
It's uncharted territory in a lot of ways.
Right. These aren't your typical policy areas.
Yeah.
It's not like building a bridge or passing a tax cut.
Right.
We're talking about technologies that have the potential to fundamentally reshape society as we know it. So how can we even begin to predict what impact these orders will have?
That's the challenge, isn't it? And it's why the composition of those working groups he's establishing will be so crucial.
Right. Who's actually going to be on these working groups?
Exactly. Who he appoints to these positions will signal his priorities and his overall approach to regulation in these emerging sectors.
So will he surround himself with tech industry insiders who want to see minimal regulation and rapid innovation? Or will he prioritize consumer protection and ethical considerations by appointing experts who are more cautious about the potential downsides of these technologies?
Those are the key questions. And the answers will determine whether these policies truly foster responsible innovation or simply create opportunities for exploitation and abuse.
It makes you wonder, is the government even equipped to handle something as complex and fast-moving as AI, or will they be constantly playing catch-up, always a step behind the latest technological advancements?
That's a valid concern, and it's something that lawmakers and policymakers around the world are grappling with right now.
And then, of course, there's that, ever-present issue of cultural divisions and political polarization.
Oh yeah, that's not going away anytime soon.
Will Trump's rhetoric and actions further exacerbate these tensions, or will he surprise us all and make a genuine effort to bridge the divides in this country?
He certainly has a knack for pushing buttons and playing to his base, but he's also shown a more pragmatic side at times, like with his criminal justice reform efforts during his first term.
That's true.
So it's impossible to predict with certainty how we'll navigate these complex social and political dynamics in his second term. It could be more of the same divisive rhetoric, or he could pull a 180 and try to unite the country. Only time will tell.
Okay, so domestically, we've got legal battles, brewing tech policies with uncertain implications, and that ever-present threat of deepening divisions. Now let's zoom out and consider the global implications of all of this. What are some potential scenarios on the international stage?
Well, the America First agenda is already causing ripples across the globe. There are some who see it as a sign that the U.S. is retreating from its role as a global leader. And that's creating anxiety among allies who have long depended on American support.
And it's also emboldening those who view America as a rival or adversary, right? I mean, if the U.S. is stepping back, others are going to step in to fill that void.
Exactly. Think about the potential for increased Chinese influence or resurgence of Russian aggression. A less engaged America could embolden these countries to act more assertively, potentially leading to greater instability and conflict around the world.
So it's not just about trade deals and economic competition, it's about the balance of power on a global scale. And with Trump seemingly intent on shaking things up, that balance is feeling very precarious right now.
It is, and we can't rule out the potential for unintended consequences, a more assertive China, a more aggressive Russia. These are scenarios that could have a ripple effect across the entire global system, leading to conflict in unexpected places and ways.
It's like a giant game of geopolitical Jenga.
That's a great analogy.
One wrong move and the whole tower could come crashing down.
But it's not all doom and gloom.
Right.
We also can't forget that Trump has shown a willingness to break with convention and forge unexpected alliances or strike deals that defy expectations.
Right, those summits with Kim Jong-un come to mind. No one saw those coming. And while they didn't ultimately lead to denuclearization, they did open up a dialogue that few thought was possible. So who knows? Maybe we'll see some surprising diplomatic breakthroughs in this term as well.
That's the thing about Trump. He keeps everyone guessing. But one thing is for certain, it's going to be a wild ride. And it's important to remember that we're not just passive passengers on this ride. We have a role to play in shaping the future, both as individuals and as a nation.
That's a great point to end on. We can't just sit back and be spectators to history. We need to stay informed, engage in those difficult conversations, hold our leaders accountable, and advocate for the kind of world we want to live in.
Well said. We can't predict the future, but we can choose how we respond to the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating and so important.
Exactly. So to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of this pivotal moment in history and provided some food for thought as we embark on this journey together. It's sure to be a bumpy ride, but with awareness and engagement, we can navigate the twists and turns and maybe even steer things in a positive direction. Thanks for joining us.